Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to episode 37 of Chess Basics, things every chess player ought to know. Today we're returning to the subject or topic of tactics, and we're looking at tactics using the games of Paul Morphy as an example. And this is another game from Paul's. I talked a little bit about him earlier. This was, again, played when he was quite young. I've been going through his games more or less in order. So he was 12 or 13 at the time, playing his uncle Ernest Morphy, who Ernest was actually the top player in New Orleans before Paul came along. So he was quite a good player. They played an interesting game up to this point. Let's see, it's Black's turn to move. Paul is white. And Black is about to make a mistake. But let's talk a little bit about what Paul has done. Notice that he's got this diagonal that he's open towards his opponent's king, and notice that Paul's light-squared bishop is missing. So if you count the pieces, Black has 3 minor pieces and Paul has 2. Both sides have 2 rooks and a queen. So he's sacrificed a piece, and all he's got to show for it at this point is a pawn and this persistent pin. And what's interesting is that earlier Paul had his knight on this square, so he could have won the exchange at least and been more or less materially equal. So the sacrifice that he made was not entirely convincing. It was not, if you rated a chess engine, the chess engine thinks Black is slightly better with accurate play. But on the other hand, it's a very difficult sacrifice to refute. So it's the kind of thing that actually modern chess players will do this as well. They'll make a sacrifice where you have lots of compensation, and only if your opponent plays the absolute most accurate moves can he hope to equalize or get a decent game. And you just keep the pressure on and wait for your opponent to crack. So common technique, and Paul is using this. And part of that strategy is not to cash in on your gains too soon, but to keep maneuvering until you see a chance where you can really strike. And so we're coming up on that point here. His opponent is the knight move has unmasked an attack on the queen, and so Black to deal with that just moved his queen to the side, played queen to d8. And now it's Paul's turn to move, and this is your tactics quiz for this first tactics quiz here. What is Paul's move, and how does he win the game here? Okay, I gave a lot of clues in the introduction, so this is kind of a little warm-up. You should have been able to spot this. Pause the video and really think about it if you didn't spot it. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. The answer is rook e7. Yeah, he's got a pinned rook here, and Paul can just win a whole rook. There's no way to defend that rook. The queen can't come over and defend it, and even if it did, no, the queen can't come over and defend it because the knight is guarding that square. The queen can't come up here to defend it because the queen is guarding this diagonal. There's no pieces that you can stick in the way except just to throw them away. So this this piece is lost, and his opponent resigned at this point. So that was the first game. Here, let's take a look at the next one. And let's get up to the critical move here, and let's turn the board around. Now this was an interesting game. Paul was black here, and he was playing against James McConnell, who I assume is another New Orleans player. And Paul was playing the French defense. You don't see too many games where he played the French defense, but his opponent played e4 and Paul played e6, and we got into the advanced variation of the French, where white has a big center. But if you'll see, white has made a bunch of pawn moves, and he's a bit lagging in development. So, for example, this rook here is still blocked in by the knight. The knight hasn't been developed. The bishop hasn't been developed. Paul has developed all of his minor pieces except for the bishop next to the king there. So he's ahead in development, and white is ahead in space. And actually, there's a tactical blow that Black has here, and Black is just winning the game at this point. So the advantage in development is more important in this particular case than the advantage in space that white has. Now this is a more difficult problem than the last one. The last one was just a little warm-up. So your challenge is to find the best move for Black in this position. And so you can stop the video and think about it now. I'm going to talk about it a little more and give a few clues. there is kind of an obvious sacrifice here you might want to consider. And the thing about this sacrifice is there's two different ways to sacrifice. You can sacrifice either the knight or the bishop. So that kind of narrows it down a little bit, if you see what I'm talking about. And so think about this and think about what's the best way to sacrifice. Okay, so now really pause the video and see how far ahead you can calculate. See if you can figure out the right sacrifice and see if you can figure out why it's working. Yep, I'm going to give the answer away right now. So the answer is bishop takes b4 check. Now the other one you might have considered is knight takes b4 check, but after knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, you know, white can interpose knight b to d2. And this is okay. There's not a lot happening. White is better. You know, he's lost a couple pieces, but he's lost a couple pawns, but he's won a whole piece for it. And so it'll just take him a little bit of time to unscramble, but he should do okay in this position. So let's back up. Now the sacrifice that works is bishop takes b4. And what to do about this? Well, first of all, if you just move the king or interpose the knight right away, then black is just a pawn up. So the only way to try and refute this sacrifice is to take it with the pawn, and then you take back with the knight. And that was the point of this order of this sacrifice, is that Paul wanted to end up with a knight on this square, not a bishop. And what does the knight do from this square that's so important? So now this is another point to pause the video and see if you can figure out why is black winning here. I mean, the material balance is still 2 pawns for a piece, so you know, unless black has something really good here, then white should go on to win the game. But keep in mind, it's white's move, and the queen is under attack. So those are kind of the key points of this position. And yeah, pause the video and think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now, and the answer has to do with the queen. The queen, it just turns out, has no really good moves. So why is that true? Let's look at something simple like queen, just queen back to e2 here, staying in touch with the bishop. And black has the move knight c2 check. And you know, if he doesn't want to, notice that the knight is supported by the rook there, so the queen doesn't want to take the knight, and nobody else can take it, so the king should move. Say king goes to f2. Then you get your piece back and you attack the rook, and so now you're 2 pawns up. You're no longer a piece down for 2 pawns. Black is attacking, he's 2 pawns up, and he's just completely winning. So okay, so that's one point. There's a discovered attack on the bishop. So that's why this is winning, actually. It turns out there's just no good square for that queen. So look, all along, well, we tried queen e2. Any other square along this diagonal, the queen can just be taken. Let's look at this diagonal. It's covered by the knight. The queen's there is hit by the knight, and there it's covered by the pawn. So both diagonals are out. The queen can only go up and down or right to left. So if he goes all the way over here to the right, there's knight here, knight c2 check, forks the queen and the king. Okay. The queen goes here. Once again, knight c2 check. This is a discovered attack. The rook is supporting the knight, so the queen can't really take it. I mean, it would be down to material. If the king moves, then queen takes queen. So white loses the queen. So where can the queen go? Queen can't go here because the rook, can't go here because of the knight. So that eliminated all the squares there. So that only leaves the squares up and down. And the queen goes here all the way to d1. Once again, knight c2 check. King has to move, and queen takes b2, just like in the other line. And then finally, the move that was played in the game after eliminating all of those, sorry, let's back up to the game. His opponent played queen to d2, and knight c2 check once again is winning, but Paul found an even more interesting way to check, to win the game rather than knight c2 check. So this is the near the end of the game. Can you guess what Paul played here that was not knight c2 check? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. The other piece that can come to c2 is the rook. And now the queen is pretty much trapped. It has no squares to go to. The rook covers the square. Let's see. Oh, it could go there. Could go. No. The rook covers this square. The knight covers this square. The knight covers this square. This row is out. The rook covers that square. So the only move for the queen is here. And then Paul played knight e3. Knight e3, rather. Trapping the queen. So this was a queen trap. The queen has nowhere to go when he's under attack from the knight. And so his opponent surrendered at this point. So that was the tactic in this game. So let's back up. And let's go to this point. Yeah. So it's right here when it's black's move that you have to notice these things. And now you might get discouraged. This seems kind of deep, but you have to remember that in a slow game, an over-the-board game, you have time to think about these things. You have average of maybe 2 minutes a move. But you don't spend 2 minutes on every move. You spend a few seconds on moves you're going to make quickly. You build up some time. You have, 10 or 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Sometimes even half an hour can be spent on a single move if it's really critical. So, but say 10 or 15 minutes as a rough guide. You get to a really critical point where you think there's some tactic here. You want to figure out the best way to work it out. You can spot these things. So, first of all, it's a common theme to just sacrifice a piece for 2 pawns and open up lines to the opponent's king. The real question is what's best. And so you try knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes in your head, and you see, well, you can block that, and you don't see any big follow-up. So then you try the other order, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, and you see that the knight is hitting the queen, and then you ask yourself, does the queen have any good squares to go to? And you start to notice, if you think about every square the queen can go to in your head, and this is the hard part, I have to admit, this is the hard part. You have to just imagine all the different squares the queen can go to and notice that it's losing. And basically, the knight c2 check wins against almost everything. So you really just have to notice knight c2 check is winning against all those queen moves. And it would have even worked against queen d2, but that rook c2 was kind of cute as well, trapping the queen with knight e3. So that's your second tactical quiz. I wanted to just look at one more game. This is another game where Paul was black. Let's go to the next game. And he was playing James McConnell again, and this game was a Evans Gambit. And let's get up to the position where, White had just played queen takes, a5 there. It's black's turn to move. And so this is sort of intermediate in difficulty. There's a good move that black has here, and so what do I want to say about this? This is more about how to continue the attack rather than, it's not a single tactical blow that wins the game, but it's kind of a logical move, and it is actually winning when you start to think through all the ramifications of it. So what are the things to notice about the position? One is that all of White's pieces somehow got shuffled over here on the queen side, and Black's king is all alone with just a rook. Now, he's got a pretty solid formation with rooks and pawns. And so what's the second thing to notice? The second thing is that Paul's pieces are poised to jump into the game, but he doesn't have enough force with the force that he has out there. So that's your clue. Pause the video and think about what's the best move for Black. How does Black continue the attack in this position? Okay, I am going to give the answer away here. The answer is queen to g5. And I like this move a lot. It's kind of clever. It's well, first of all, it's obvious in a sense that you're just bringing your queen out to the attack and you're just putting pressure on the black king. But it's got a side threat here, which is the threat is knight to f3 check. Actually would win the queen. And and White has to do something about that immediately. The engine recommendation here is queen c5. But after that, Paul can play bishop to e4. And this is a double attack, right? It's attacking the queen and it's threatening mate here. So that's not so great, really. That was queen d5. Queen c5, yeah, avoiding that, sorry. Queen d5 was not good. But even so, bishop e4 is still a strong move. concentrating here, and if the pawn comes up to f3, that can just be taken. And we'll see this theme in the game. What was actually played by his opponent was king to h1. Yep, back up. He left the queen there. He played king to h1, which is another way of dealing with the threat. Now the knight doesn't come here with check, and the knight is pinned, so that's a logical move. But Paul plays bishop e4, and after f3, he takes. And g takes was played here, and now the queen comes into g3. And notice the queen stays in touch with the knight and has unpinned the knight, so the knight is free to move. And now there's a threat of knight takes f3 and a check mate with queen to h2. And once again, this is an attack that is winning just because of the configuration of the pieces. I mean, Paul has sacrificed a piece, and he's got 2 pawns to show for it. But the main problem is that all of White's pieces are in a cluster over here. So let's just go through. Let's play a few more moves. He played knight d2, knight f5, bringing another piece into the attack. Rook a e1, trying to go after this knight here. Now queen takes h3 check, king g1. These moves could have been played at any time. Rook f to e8, bringing in the rook, and now he's got this threat of rook up and over to checkmate. Rook f2 was played, queen g3 check, and the king ran all the way to f1. Now another knight comes in, knight to d3, forking the 2 rooks. He gets out of the fork by exchanging, and then takes on f7 check, and then the king moves to this side. But at this point, White just resigned. I guess he was hoping for some sort of perpetual check here. Notice that he hasn't got time to take the knight because queen there is checkmate. So just an overwhelming attack for black and no way out for White. There was a mate in 4 there or something. So if we back up to the original position, this is your lesson. It's notice when your opponent's pieces are offside, and develop your pieces with threats, and you'll just get an overwhelming force, and you can then continue to win the game. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.